Welcome, guys, to another episode of ValueFirst Expert Interviews. And today, I'm very happy to announce that we have a Guss in the room. Welcome.
Thanks, Kai.
We are holding a coffee.
Coffee there.
So now, Guss has lots of experience in all kinds of project management, starting a company, different things, lots of different things. We'll get into that. But before, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to when you were a young boy. Let's say 10 years, plus minus a little bit. Where were you?
So I grew up in Ireland,
Yeah.
in a town called Waterford, which is on the southeast coast of Ireland. And my parents moved around quite a lot when I was young, so we spent some time, my early years were in the UK, and then we went back to Ireland where my family's from, and then we moved around. My dad moved around for work, so we moved to the mid-country, up by Offaly, and then we back down to Waterford again. So really great memories of those times, especially going to the seaside with my dad was like the highlight of my life. Absolutely.
I know even today you have a keen interest in boats. We might talk about that a little bit more, but is that where is that where that came from?
Yeah, absolutely, because I've grown up around boats and river things and sea things, and it's just, you know, when you're a kid and you see people go out on trawlers and you just think, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Right, and there was shipping in Waterford right up to the quay in the town, and I was just always fascinated by it. It's just amazing and beautiful, and there's something quite graceful about a boat that can come in, take hundreds of tons of cargo, and just quietly just drift out. Seemingly, how does it do it? You know, compared to pushing things around on trucks and cars and bikes, it's amazing. And water is also terrifying. Yeah. I've had a few scary experiences in water, and as all kids do.
Yeah.
You know, I'll just jump in and see what happens. You know, jump in and see what happens. Yeah. It's just that, you know.
You know, I've been having more than scary moments, very near death many times.
Really?
Windsurfing in the big waves in Hawaii.
Wow, okay.
Enormous waves
big
and currents and just scary.
I guess the difference is the Atlantic can be a bit quieter but colder.
Yeah,
but
colder.
Yeah.
Actually, also when I was about 10, actually, my parents, Tom and Sol, as you know, they took us here to England, and we rented boats in the Thames and another river.
Wow.
I forget the name of the other river, another one of the big ones here.
Yeah.
And we had like a week here and a week there.
Brilliant.
And we did the locks
it's
ourselves
a great
manually.
holiday. Great holiday.
And Tom, basically, you know, he had a car, and he went to like conferences and things.
Oh, really? Like
and,
a runner?
Because the car, you can move really fast.
Yeah.
Compared to the boat like that. So we would cruise up the river.
It's just a great holiday.
And I have 3 brothers, and we just had a blast.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah. You learn to live your life walking forwards and backwards on a narrow boat. There's no left and right.
Yeah, we had those canal boats.
Yeah, it's just
really
forward and backwards. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. All right. Now, at that age, all right. So you like boats and canals, but what else was your interest? Do you have a special interest at that age?
Yeah, I guess I love building things. Like I was a crazy Lego fiend from when I can remember.
Yeah.
And success for me was manipulating a parent or relation to buy me some additional Lego. So I was absolutely crazy about Lego and anything related to that. But I think when I was around 10, my brother, who's 10 years older than me, got his first computer, which was like the early Spectrum, the one with the silly white keys on it that you had to use your thumbnail to press down. And he was hugely into this. He got Byte magazine, B-Y-T-E magazine, and started to try get into these things. And I was really curious about it. And it took me a few years to kind of get into it because it wasn't as immediate as picking up blocks and sticking them together, you know.
Right.
And actually, myself and my brother both shared a passion for cycling, so we did quite a bit of that together. But the computing stuff still took a couple of years to be useful, but it was really formative times. Like this is when Spectrum released their first printer, which was this little thing that looked like a toilet roll,
right?
And you could, you know, it was incredibly expensive for what it was, but the excitement of being able to get something printed out
right.
was truly phenomenal. You know, it was just unbelievable. and my parents complained about us using the telly all the time with the computer, and we got an old 14-inch portable instead, and all those kind of things.
Right.
And that was really, really cool. That was like really, really fun, exciting times, because when you're 10, school isn't too difficult, so it was more into building stuff and playing with this new computer thing, which we thought was kind of, I wondered if we thought it was going to be a fad or not.
Right.
Yeah, because my dad, they just put the first PC into his factory to do, I think it was something to do with the accounting system. So it was a thing back then. It was like, they're here to stay. Computers are coming for you, kind of thing. And we just thought, how can we load games on it?
Right.
And mess around with the games. It's like totally cool.
Did he make any games?
We typed a couple in off magazines.
Right.
And we found
Byte magazine.
Yeah, Byte magazine.
I had
Did
those
you have-
too.
yeah.
So Tom, he had a subscription. It's not like we had the whole internet and lots of magazines. So we had Byte. So
Yeah,
I read a lot of those,
Yeah,
even though I
yeah.
was not really into
Well,
the same way. But I
the
read
thing
a lot.
was, like, this was like cavemen trying to type in kind of Schrodinger's equations or something, because we didn't have a clue what half of this stuff was about.
I did the same thing.
And we had to lift the paper clips in the center of the pages to try see what was actually under them. Oh, there's a semicolon. Oh no, there's a comma there. So most of the day after typing it in for hours was, why doesn't the damn thing work? What's it doing? My brother got conned into typing this huge program in. I remember it took him over a day, and it was going to calculate the CRC for the program without him having to do it manually, because at the time you type in your program and then it'd spit out the CRC, and when it didn't match, you had to do all this stuff. So this was a program that fixed that problem for you. And of course, when he typed it all in for hours and hours and hours, it said April Fools. Right? And I remember that. I suddenly became much more interested in computing at that stage. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Did you have any influencers that you can remember back then, like somebody who early influencers in life can sometimes be interesting.
The first influencer I remember that seriously changed my view of everything was my aunt. One of my aunts, my dad's sister, Jane, and she gave me a book on stars.
Huh?
And I read this and I was completely blown away by it. It's like, whoa, okay, this is a huge ball of gas that's burning under nuclear fusion in the sky, and the only reason we're not burning up is because we're far enough away from it, and it's kicking out all this energy, and it's huge, totally massive, and we're going around it. Mind you, Mach's principle would say that we haven't established that's scientifically correct yet, but most people would agree that we're going around the sun, and it just totally blew me away. I just thought, wow, there's different types of stars. They're different colors. They've got different things in them, different elements in them. I'm like, this is totally amazing. And then in the end, I ended up going to university and studying astrophysics because it stayed with me. It just stuck in me, and I just couldn't get rid of it. Even though school did its absolute best to stamp out any interest I had in physics, I still ended up going to university and studying it for that book, for that reason.
How did school not support you there?
Oh,
I mean, I can guess,
but
let's get it out there. I mean, now we have a chance.
Have you seen the secondary physics stuff? It doesn't. It seems to inoculate people against interest or having curiosity. This is a problem with the school system in general. It's that you can be forced concepts before you're ready to even consider them, and also you don't see the relevance of them.
Right.
But basic stuff like, why is grass green? Why is sky blue? Why do things fall back to the earth? Why do everything fall to the ground at the same time, really? No matter if it's a car or a bus, they still fall at the same speed, really?
Right.
And all these kind of things. Why don't I fall over when a train goes fast?
Right.
Why am I still able to sit down happily and walk around? And because when trains were brought in, people were terrified. They were going to be smashed and planes, they were going to be smashed on the back wall. All these kind of curious mechanical properties. And then, because we came through, like my nan was born in 1899, and she remembers no lighting in the city, and then she was in the first area of the city where gas lighting was brought in. She remembers the guy getting up on the ladder every night and lighting the gas lamps, and then she remembers electricity coming in, and then she remembers like radio, first radio, and then they had one of the first TVs in the town because my granddad was incredibly mechanically minded. So he was like, my granddad was my key influencer when it came to all things mechanical, electrical, and everything. He ran the Post and Telegraph in that part of Ireland, and apparently Siemens tried to poach him multiple times. My family on his side was originally Swedish, and they tried to poach him back to Sweden multiple times to do R&D for them. But he had a solid civil service job, and my nan said, "No way are you leaving. We're staying here. You've got a safe job. That's all you need. That's good enough." So he expressed his creativity through, he built his own steam engine.
Did you get to
I
be part
worked
of
with
any
him.
of that?
So I was, he died of cancer, unfortunately, when I was young. So I was about 8 when he died. But up to that time, from when I was kind of switching on about 6, I had 2 years of just following him around in his shed. He made his own overhead drill, made his own engine, did all this kind of crazy stuff, and made jewellery and like all kinds of musical instruments. And he was just fantastically creative and interesting. So he was definitely gave me that want to try create with my own hands. You know, it's like you can do it, right? You don't need, it doesn't need to be some big corporation or something or somebody else to do it. You can actually figure out the principles for yourself and go for it. He was absolutely amazing, incredible man. It's just a shame we lost him so early. He was a smoker and he just got lung cancer, you know. So yeah, it was. I was very small at the time, but I knew it was terrible. You don't understand these things when you're a kid.
No.
Right, you know, you're kind of insulated.
But he was gone.
He was gone. He was suddenly gone. And as you're a kid, you're just like, oh, he's gone. What happened? That's weird. You just carry on. I think when you're older, the significance of these things are probably become more apparent.
There's been, you know, with this, there's a new thing now about fixing things. You know, popping up in different places, and that, you know, where they have little shops, I guess, around the city, and people will help you a little bit and go and fix things. And I don't know,
absolutely. I'm still. That's why I like old tech, really old tech, kind of the Victorian era. My daughter always says, "Oh, you're such a Victorian dad." You know, I think she means that in more than one way, I think. But I like the ability to say, I understand the principle, I can see what's happening, I can see what's wrong, and actually I have a chance of fixing it, or going to somebody and working with them to fix it. My granddad had a stream of people come to him week on week to say, "Oh, this is broken, my radio's broken, can you help me fix it?" But now in this age of planned obsolescence, none of these things are there, and all that joy of creativity is gone. And like you look at Dmitro, he talks about the robotics that he's building with kids. Right? It's that same magical creativity. If you're small, there's a big person assembling robots, I'm going to get in there and give it some too. And if it breaks, we can put it back together again. Brilliant. And like that's raw, like that's absolutely visceral creativity that we all have inside us. It just gets stamped out of us when we get big and stupid and the cares of the world surround us and we forget that we're innately curious and creative, you know. I think the school system for teenagers is not good at harnessing that creativity. I think it's good at making conformity. It's based on the Prussian system, after all. We are looking for conformity, and that's a huge loss for our society. Huge loss.
Did you do? I agree. I'm with you there.
Cool.
Did you at university? Did you get into programming there, because you're doing astrophysics?
Yeah, I had to do a lot of numerical simulation. So n-body problem, or you know, even heat gradients and stuff. Like we had a computer lab, but that was mostly about practical stuff like thermocouples and stuff. But we had to do Fortran, and we had to do things like Albert's paradox. Give me some working computer model that explains why the sky is dark, right? And the whole crux of this little paradox is that Albert looks out the sky and says, hang on a second, if the universe has been around forever and it's got limitless numbers of stars, then the sky should be the average brightness of an average star. So why is the sky dark, right? So, and you've got different models, which are, it hasn't been around for a long time. it's expanding so that you only see a certain amount of light because it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, or it stars don't live for very long, or maybe there's something else at play, like something is gobbling up the light from all the different stars. So you had to code it, and I really didn't like it. I really did not like software development coding, and I ended up basically locking myself in for 2 weeks to really get my head around Fortran, and came out the other side kind of a changed person. I thought, actually, I can see the use of this thing. I still don't like it, but I can see the use of it. And actually, I failed computing in my first year in university. Right. It was paired with theoretical physics. I did really well in theoretical physics. I failed computing because I didn't turn up, because I didn't want to. And I had to resit it. And that's when I had to really get into learning Fortran properly. Right. So yeah, it was not from, I tried to escape, but I couldn't.
Well, it seems like it's been a big part of your life.
It has.
So after university, what was the first job that you took on?
I ran a wine cellar.
Let's hear it now.
I'd always worked in pubs
and
in hotel bars, and I ran a wine cellar.
Right.
When I got out of university, because I wanted something completely different.
You ran your own
wine? I got hired by Victoria Wine in Cardiff, which is where I went to university. And then the area manager there, she kind of stayed around me for a couple of weeks and then said, okay, fine, you're fine to run the shop for most of the time. I'll call in whenever you need me. And there's another guy who will do out of hours. I was looking for hours and just to try to do something else. And I threw myself into that whole world of logistics and ordering and marketing and doing just signs in the windows, signs on the shop. I ended up getting thrown on strange management courses, which I had no idea about, and wine tasting, which is great. And needless to say, there was a staff discount for alcohol, which is very important.
Good job.
It's all good. And,
as a teenager or young.
Yeah, so it was like really cool, and I just got to work with a whole load of different types of people, from all around Wales, that were just really cool. A lot of them were really smart. They're really different types of people, and some of them are really business savvy. Right, they really understood how to run their shop better and attract customers and change things.
Now, until recently at least, you used to run software projects, software-heavy projects. At least maybe they're not just software. Now, what did you learn then at the Vine, or even at the pub? Right, you said you worked in pubs too, right? That you bring over to IT type project management.
The thing that the people that I respected in the bar trade or running clubs is even more difficult, I think, or the wine cellar, was that the senior people that had something, they had responsibility, they could still do the job, right? They could come in and they would stock up, rotate bottles, clean stuff. They didn't swan around doing nothing, like as
some other managers we heard about.
As is commonplace in larger organisations. Right. They got in, they just did the job, and actually they were quite expert about the job. Right. They saw seasonal trends, they had interesting insights, and they would just go and do things, and you're like, whoa! Like there was one guy I worked with, and he just disappeared one afternoon, and all of a sudden a huge truck turned up outside the pub. It had like 600 weight of sand in it. I was like, what the hell? These two guys come in, they tip the truck, push all this sand into the pub, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And then come in with like cactus and stuff and put it around. And it's like the dead of winter, and he's like, we're going to have a Bermuda party, it's going to be amazing. And I'm like, what, you nutcase, and who's going to clean up all this sand? But I learned a lot from him because he was just really creative, excited, and enthused, and it was infectious. Right. So when I realized that, in software, I guess the problem is that there can be a lot of mistrust between people that write software, design software, understand software and systems, which is a huge field. We talk everything from the OSI model for networking to distributed CAP theorem problems to like just trying to understand something as complex as the modern web browser. These are all vastly huge areas, never mind design, layout, typography, and all the aesthetics that come with usability, information architecture as we go back in, eventual consistency, performance and throughput. These are all vastly different areas and require different skills and different points of view. When you have people that are in there as managers as well, then the suspicion is always, oh well, you were never an engineer, or you were never a whatever, right? And I think that can be quite destructive, right? Because I saw people in these other places, and they could all do the job. It was only later in life that I realized that actually you don't have to be a software engineer to be able to be useful in that environment, right? If you're able to manage schedules, have really productive conversations with people, listen and observe people's body language, be really clear about what requirement is, or what's really behind this, or just ask questions, or be able to be forceful and say, listen, Mr. Customer or Mr. Developer, whoever else, you're coming way too strong here. You're trying to push through a decision. I don't think we're all happy with it. We need to slow it down. Those kind of facilitation things, which I saw a lot of from these people.
Right.
Like this, they have to manage staff, and you're talking about staff that are, they're kind of like, some of them are kids, and they're just not really interested in all those kind of things. So it's there's a lot of takeover from the softer management skills that I saw between both sides. The same characteristics of who I'd consider to be, I'd love to work with them again. Right? It's not because they were brilliant at scaling something, or they understood AWS like the back of their hand or something. That's all irrelevant. You're just like, they were infectiously enthusiastic, they were creative, they were really good communicators, and better still, they could listen, and they had kind of aerials where they could go, is everything all right? Can I talk to you? Is it okay? Like, is there something I can do to help?
Right.
Or can I just talk to you? You were way too over the edge in that last session. I was trying to give you some signals, but
really good people skills.
Yeah. It's just like that doesn't seem right to me. And just been able to repeat the conversation exactly and say, you said this, and I think you meant this, but it came across to everybody else like, whoa, that's really helpful, because they talk, like corporations talk about growing people and all these weird terms, like there's some kind of fungi or something. You just put mulch on them and pour vitamins on them, and you're growing people. And so forth, and they just miss all this ability to have individual, very productive, direct eye contact conversations, and to be open to, like I remember saying to, who was it, the woman that I worked for in the off license, I was like, but I wouldn't stock it like this at all. And she was like, what? And she's like, we've been doing this for years. And I was like, but I'd never do it. Like, wouldn't you just put these out, because they're never going to sell where they are, and like they're too difficult. And she's like, well, you got the place for the weekend, Gus. Go crazy. You can do it this way, and we'll see what happens.
Right.
And I was like, so rather than complaining about it, she was like, sure, go for it. Go for your life. She asked me what my countermeasure was. She asked me why I thought it was going to work. And then she said, cool, we'll compare the difference. And of course, we had this crazy old antiquated tool system. Right. And sure enough, we did.
You compared the difference
the previous
in
week's
sales.
results. Yeah.
Right. And what I'm hearing is you suggest giving that kind of freedom in a software development environment.
I think so, but so freedom, and we talk about autonomy a lot, and that silly word empowerment, which is often used, which I'm terrified of. It has to be. It's got to be decided between both parties. You can't just go, oh, there you go, freedom, off you go, and then go, oh, what the hell was that? That's not what I was expecting. It needs to be done on a gradual basis, and the sharing of responsibility needs to happen conversationally. It's not like I'm going to put up my manifesto for how you're all free now, and then hold private attributions about what I expect to see, and then judge you going, oh, that Kai fella, he's not delivering at all. Look, I gave him all this freedom, he hasn't done anything. I've been in a situation where I started a job with a big machine. I was working in a joinery factory, and I had no idea what to do. Absolutely zero idea. And that is absolutely terrifying, right? Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Right? I just, what am I looking
at?
Around?
Freedom.
And that's just it, right? I had all this freedom, and I was paralyzed by it because there was so much ambiguity. What the hell? like if I've got freedom to choose this method or whatever because I'm in flow and I understand the context, cool. But just saying you've got all this freedom, it doesn't amount to much. And I guess, like, I think freedom is about trying to build that kind of internal commitment where, rather than external commitment, which is I'm here for the money or whatever, and I switch off when I come in, I switch back on when I go home. That internal commitment, which is, yeah, I'm bringing my whole self here. I'm like really, really in. I want to be able to define how I work and how I work with other people. I want to define what it is we're working on and how we prioritize those things. I think that's really where we want to get to. But on the flip side, that's an awful lot of effort and responsibility for people. There are loads of people who don't want that type of commitment. So trying to foster on that freedom to try get that commitment out of people won't always work. There's a lot of people that have, what was it, the guy G. Paul Hill on Twitter, he said, a lot of people I talk to, they're just getting macerated in their personal lives, right? By whatever circumstance. Their parents are ill, or they have a stormy relationship, or whatever.
Life.
Yeah, they've just had the people upstairs. Their bathroom is leaking and it's just destroyed. All these things, right? And he said just an awful lot of people he talks to are just being macerated. So when you expect here's all this freedom, be creative, jump in and do all this kind of stuff, it just might not be the right time. Like, have the offer there and have the conversations with people, but don't expect it to be a light switch. This is why all these bloody transformation empowerment-y things don't work. You just can't. You can't expect people to change that way. It's just not it. And the second one, of course, is that the people in power, the managers or whatever they're called, directors or whoever they might be, they can also act in ways that, while they say they want people to have freedom, they act in a completely contrary manner. And they won't even know that they're doing it. They'll cover it up. So, the usual, everyone's going to be free to decide the fate of this company, and here's your top 10 goals, right? Which I've unilaterally decided.
Right.
And now, and this is how we're going to work, because I've brought in a change consultancy to say we're all going to go lean, agile, Kanban, insert word here, and then, so it's just down to you to deliver it all.
So let's go there a little bit. So these agile methodologies, there's a huge area.
It's huge.
It's very popular, a very strong sales force, really, making it all happen. Now, what's good about it and what's bad? What's working, what's not working? I don't know. Do you have any views on this?
Yeah, so I guess what's in a label, right? The problem is, I guess, that there's a whole load of stuff that is positive and negative, and stuff that works in some circumstance and not in others, works in some contexts and not in others. That's just, and a lot of things that are degrees, which are just taken as absolute black and white, and slapped with a label on it. We're agile or not. Like, if you can decompose the term agile into what do we mean by agility, you probably couldn't do far wrong if you took the original manifesto and say, it's the early and often delivery of valuable software. And there's a whole lot of others after that. But even early and often delivery of valuable software, right, and delivery, right, 5 things, they all require definition. Like early for a early warning system for comets or asteroids versus early for it's a prototype app that takes a picture of your face on your phone. These are very different things, right? And often, right, so if you're releasing software into a environment that is regulated, what's often? As minimum as the regulations allow? Do you push for regulatory change? Do you want it every day? Like, I see the annoyance that people have on smartphones when every time they try to use an app, it just keeps downloading a new version of itself. It's totally annoying, and we go with there. So like all these things, the values, I think the values of the original manifesto are good, right? But they're not values in a kind of a you'll have to do this. I think they're more heuristics. We think that given limited time, and attention, and we have a certain context, and if you apply these heuristics, like just prefer this over this, go for work and software over comprehensive documentation, then generally, in our experience as the group, and remember they're a specific group of people, this is a good heuristic to go for. It might not be everything. I'm just an old XP guy. Right? I picked up XP in '99. I read the book. I just thought, this is exactly what I've been scratching at for the past couple of years. We just have to do this. This makes complete, utter, 100% sense. And then kind of when Agile became Agile and the phrase came in and stuff, I thought, yeah, it's just XP, right? Brilliant. And then we got into Scrum, and then it kind of turned into a machine. And I saw the power of process. I saw teams that I was working with become very highly productive, but not very adaptable, like real factories. And there were some negative side effects to this as well. Real homogeneity in the teams. You know, like hiring people that are like people that are like people, right? It was all kind of standard teams. There was little diversity, and where there was, it was kind of hunted out. People left that didn't quite fit. Right. And like there were certain behaviors that were acceptable, certain behaviors that weren't, and it just felt, I don't know, it felt like it kept reverting to a kind of a factory. Right, great things were done, mountains were moved, but as a dynamic learning environment, it didn't make the cut for me. And then Scrum obviously kind of codified a lot of this. And where I got off the bandwagon with Scrum was when it said, you can produce a potentially shippable increment. Right. Potentially. Right? It's just like, it is or it isn't. Right. You know what I mean? It's not, it's a bit Yoda, right? It's like, you know, there's do or do not, there is no try. It's like potentially, ship or don't ship, there is no potentially, right?
We, as you probably know, we like to take it to a different dimension almost. Like instead of potentially shippable code, forget code and all that, is we should try to produce improved value.
Yeah,
is where we believe it should be. But I think
exactly.
You probably share that.
Yeah, that's the critical thing, is that like when all this was starting, like when I got into this in '99, we couldn't get software at the door.
Right.
We just couldn't. Right. People weren't even using source control systems half the time. It was flipping chaos. People were emailing around patch files, and some dude had tried build it all on his laptop and it wouldn't work, or you know, like, or on a beige PC that was made of wooden components and stuff because corporate decided they're going to give us the worst PCs ever because that's the cheapest option. You know, all those kind of things. So we couldn't even do the basics. Right. But I think by about 2005, like we had a CI pipeline that was just running and kicking stuff into production, and those problems have been solved. So from 2006 onwards, my view is that now we need to really double down on this concept of what valuable software means, right? You know, and it's not inherently valuable in itself. It has to be put into a context where people can understand it, use it, and derive benefit from it. So we're talking impact, outcomes, those benefits, kind of things. Benefits, exactly, there, right? And it has to be visible. And so I got kind of caught up with a whole lot of things where we tried to do program management across like multiple streams. We had like 12 different projects for one client, where we had to manage the budget across the whole thing, and hiring, and this whole world of noise, where I'd been quite happy just doing single team, single project stuff. My world kind of exploded and got really noisy to try, say, now if we apply, say, some theory constraints, when we talk about throughput, or if we just do basic revenue analysis or cumulative flow, or we try to limit work in process, or we talk about software inventory as being dollar days, then can we apply that to a portfolio and optimize it from there? What would we learn? So I changed at that stage. I think at that stage I kind of got off the kind of agile thing. I'd spoken of a few things, but it was...
So at some point you met Tom before me, I think, and how did that
First time I saw
happen?
Tom was in 2005 at XP Day.
Right.
And he was this enormous force of nature who was banging on about quantifying everything. And he was, if I'd have stood there much longer, he would have quantified me probably. And I thought, this guy is mental. And he was going on about I can quantify. And I was like, oh, you know, my bugbear was, at the time in my head, was complexity of software. Coupling, efferent and afferent coupling, chains, you change this and it has this knock-on effect. How can I firewall off my systems? How do I know the information structure, degradation stuff? So complexity, and I thought, a lot of what he says completely rings true with me. I don't get the whole, where would you go with complexity? Like, how would I measure complexity and how would I even tackle it? Because, by its nature, it's like all the cables at the back of your hi-fi and TV. Right? You put them in and it turns into this huge ball of stuff. And you're like,
prevent
what?
it. It's so difficult to have order there.
And I thought that there was an analogy between software and these cables, and I couldn't see how Tom's approach was going to try diffuse that. But everything else I heard was there, but I had complexity in my head. So I left it, and I thought, that's really interesting, but I'm not going to do anything with it. Then the following year, the end of the following year, I have no idea why, but somebody from the National Audit Office or somebody like that invited myself and my business partner along with Tom and some other people for a roundtable discussion with people from different areas of government, NHS, HMRC, blah, blah, and they all wanted to know how to be agile. Maybe, that's probably why we were dragged down there.
Yeah.
So, great. And sure enough, Tom just stole the show straight away. He backed up, I think it was one of the NHS projects, and just started again with the, what is it we're trying to do? What is the why? Tell me what it is that we're trying to achieve. And he broke it down, and he just took over, stuck his laptop, stuck it up on the screen, and just from a blank page just said, let's just get the requirements clear for this multi-million-pound thing.
Right.
And I thought, this is a ballsy move, right? And I thought, they didn't particularly enjoy this, by the way, but the guy from the NAO loved it. He said, if we had some way of measuring this stuff, like for every project, this would be gold dust.
Right.
Because at least we'd have some way of telling whether these things were effective or not. And I thought, you were, and I've come from doing all this program management, I'm like, you are absolutely spot on, because it's about the qualities of the aspect of the things. So I talked to Tom for a couple of hours on the stroll back through London. We argued about complexity. We still argue about complexity.
Right.
But I'm on board with how he sees things. It's just
I think
very
you've
powerful.
had a pretty good relationship through many years now,
Yeah,
right?
through
You
a
and
long
Tom
time. And like the thing is that he's so generous with his time. And like he's written N books, where N is a large number, and he's still writing like he's some kind of machine. I don't know how he does it. But he's just so happy to give out his insight and understanding to people, and he's happy to let it be challenged and say, okay, fine. It's like I think of Tom's work as being very complementary with a whole load of other things.
Right.
I know that people fall into a trap, and I've done it myself, of using numeracy to control or force people to do things my way. I've done it through contracts, I've done it through awards, these kind of things. But I think Tom's view is the right one, which is to use the numeracy to dig down to try find the truth we're talking about, right? To really get to it and to provoke really interesting conversations. We should be able to do that. We're engineers, right? That's what we do, right?
So that takes me sort of to my to the next question. In what way have you used any of these methods with any interesting results, failure, success?
So an obvious one is, I think this has been used for years now, since 2007 has been the impact estimation table, IETs.
Right.
And you can call them action prioritization tables, or
I call
Pew
them
matrix,
value decision
tables, VDTs, yes.
So
there's all these different things. But the simple beauty of them is that we have to think about the fact that there's more than one solution.
Right.
And in an industry that is rife with solutions, and usually a dominant personality attached to a dominant solution, pulling apart, first off, even daring to mention alternatives is quite good for other team members, that they're like, oh, right. And then pulling apart the measures to say, how would we know it's good? Because IT is full of all this BS about robust and resilient and whatever. Oh, this is best in class. All this nonsense. It means nothing unless it has a number and a specific scenario and context that goes with it. So,
it's very important, this.
Yeah,
specific scenario and context.
Context, because otherwise,
you know.
how can you tell?
Right.
And I remember one notable one where we chose the distribution network for Pottermore, which was the Harry Potter website that gets huge quantities of traffic. Right? They say something about Harry Potter, bazillion people come in all over it. So they needed to be able to publish stuff frequently. Like they wanted, I think, publish to visibility time on the edges of less than a minute or something like that. So they wanted to be rapid. It had to be all the way around the globe, and they had to be able to expire or retract stuff if required, because there was, if there's a legal thing or whatever, they want to be able to pull it. And which CDN do you go with? How do you publish this stuff? Is it CloudFront or Cloudflare or Max CDN or Fastly or all this kind of stuff? And of course, everybody had wildly different ideas about which one to go for. Either they had a relationship with them and they liked Amazon, or they liked whatever Azure's one is, or they like all these kind of things. So we got the table of, how much is it per gigabyte or megabyte or whatever it was. It was gigabyte per second or whatever, terabytes I think per second. Regional coverage, blah, blah, blah. And then we could look at all their marketing documentation, or we could just test it. So what we did was we wrote some simple pages, and that we could control using Wiremock to say expire 500, error, all this kind of stuff, take forever, starve it, so feed it out really slowly, or do all these things, and then have all over the deploy all across the globe sensors that were continuously reading these from our origin. And our origin, we'd error it. Is it serving the stale pages? Can it do it? And all of a sudden, this IET just came to life. And in the end, it was like, yeah, well, actually, there's just no competition. It's these guys here.
Right.
And it was amazing. But, of course, it was an awful lot more work than anybody would do. But nobody would go against the decision. It was never going to be rolled back. And that was a different thing. It had consensus through being involved and being rational. So impact estimation is absolutely fantastic for this.
A lot of people think, first time they see, I like to call it value decision table. So, but the first time people see it, they see a lot of numbers and they go, whoa, and think you compute something. You don't really. You communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I just started originally with plus and minus,
Right. Yeah, just
direction
like
up and down or whatever,
good,
don't know, and just get better and better and better.
Right.
If it is like for technology people, it's easier to communicate with numbers.
Right.
For senior management, they can pretty much very quickly fall over if you show them a fully populated everything there. So sometimes you have to communicate it in other ways or break it down into pieces.
Yeah, we sometimes make graphs.
Yeah, the thing that I'm still working with and struggling on is connecting multiple levels together. Right.
Not many people do that. Sort of my expertise.
Yeah.
And whoever do it that I've seen, do it with me.
Right.
I've never seen anybody. So if you have done it.
Yeah, I've done it quite a few
times.
So
you've done it. Okay, great.
But
That's
it's logistically difficult to do it without a tool to support you or something, just to pivot all the time. But I get that one level's, in one context at one level, that a objective might well simply be a solution at another level. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Right. So you might say that the solution at this level is to get a new CRM system in. Right. That's my goal. I need a new CRM system. How am I going to do that? I've got all these choices, blah, blah. But that new CRM system is simply a solution for improving customer experience or stopping missed orders or something like that.
Right.
And there might be a whole load new CRM system. There might be 5 others.
Right.
Or 10 others.
Exactly.
Right. And then that goes up to, why do you want to improve that? Why don't we? You might have improve our order entry systems or customer handling or know your customer, but you might have outsource. That might have other options like outsource my customer handling to a third party, or you know what I mean. So as you go up to the real strategic level, these things have serious impact.
Yeah.
And I've written contracts like proposals that have listed that kind of 3 levels of depth. The issue is that
in contracts, 3 levels.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that one day.
Yeah, sure. It's not fun. The issue is that people are very comfortable about talking about the bottom level. Right. And very abstract about talking about the top.
Right.
But
and some people even think like some managers think they're supposed to be vague at the top, giving freedom somehow, and
that doesn't help at all, because how do you know when you're done? Right? How do I know how to prioritize if it's so vague? It just doesn't help me. And it's a real strategist nightmare to be working with a board that is very, very unclear and refuses to be clear, because they hold some strange ideas about the fact that, well, if I nail it down to a specific, then I can be held accountable to it. Right. And the art is, which you clearly are an expert at, but this is being clear about the outcome, specific. Yeah. Not specific in you will do A, B, and C, and that's how you have to do it. Because all this is fluid,
right?
And the strategies are fluid that you choose, but you start to reduce them down as fast as you can.
Right.
What scares me sometimes is I see limited or publicly listed companies, and they will have a completely disconnected arm that will go and talk to the city for their financial results or what they say they're going to do the next year. And this is a completely disconnected process from how they structure their work and their whatever they have. They probably have roadmaps and all this kind of stuff. So they come back after they've worked in a corner to say, this is what we're saying to the city and we're going to grow by this amount and so on. And they suddenly come back and everything's thrown into disarray. Whereas if these things were connected, it would save so much churn and chop and anxiety and it would, link the realities together, as it were, right? Because they are most certainly realities. Both of them are realities.
Yeah.
One is financial, stock market, shareholdings, acquisitions, mergers. The other one is getting stuff into customers' hands so they can use it, and trying to connect those two things together. That's a job. That's a job.
It's an art.
Yeah, it's an art. It's an art.
Now, so we all do mistakes.
Oh,
At
yeah.
least I do. And now, do you remember any really bad mistakes that
Sure.
you've done? Maybe in life, maybe in projects.
Where do I start?
Anywhere. Sometimes it's hard to pick one because I didn't prep you for this question or this interview, but so I'm sort of giving you a little bit of time to think. But I think it's healthy to share that too, right? So Guss has been actually extremely successful in many projects that I've heard of,
So
right?
people say.
So, but as we all know, there. We'll talk about that.
I guess I have kind of two different distinct types of failures that I've experienced. One's which I was just acting, even though I knew I was acting in stupid ways, I persisted to do so because I was in a bind.
Could you give me
and a good example is, I always talk about how the entire system or systems, if you're microservices, your billions of systems and whatever, are maintained by the corpus of that, how they all work together and how they fit and how they think, are maintained by everyone in the team, or at least as many people as can understand them, right? And that kind of design control is shared, the narrative is shared, nobody's pushing their own point of view, and it's got just like a good conversation, there's back and forth, everybody has a voice, right? And what happened with one particular client was that there was a downstream system for reporting, which was not on the critical path, but absolutely required by the client. I had large quantities of anxiety because the client was applying pressure to me personally as well. Remember, I was the founder and owner-founder of this company as well, like a 1/3 shareholder. So they were personally applying pressure to me. So I thought, rather than trying to distract the team who were working hard on this one system, I'll just do this system over here, right? And it's no shakes, it's downstream, I won't do it. So I basically created a back channel. All the things I tell other people not to do, I did it myself, because I thought, hey, this will make it look like we're going fast, right? It will take stress off the team, and it'll all be fine. And it wasn't a technical disaster. I still have some capability left in me, believe it or not, but there was no ownership. Unsurprisingly, all the things that were expected during handover, it was like, well, who knows about this system? If it goes wrong in deployment, who fixes it? If there was a breaking change between the two systems, which wasn't that often, but if there was, the guys working on the main system would never know because they didn't know what the other system did. They only found out through annoyance and why is the build broken and this kind of stuff. So I just, and this wasn't long ago, but it's funny, you have all this head knowledge, you have all this experience, you go, you know when things work right, and you still, if you're put in a bind, you can still make the wrong decision. Right? And because I thought it was the lesser of two evils, I thought opening up the floodgates, either trying to get it started or going back to the client and saying, no, you're not going to get this. It'll have to be next month or next month or next month, was just unacceptable. And I should have tested those assumptions publicly. I should have gone to the client and tried it out and saying this is what it's going to be. And I should have done it with my own team. But instead I held the view to myself and then I just rolled with it. And it was awful, truly, truly awful, right? But then there are other types of failure, like ones that I still don't understand. Right? So some failures I go, I was the instrument of my own destruction.
Right.
Other failures I go, I just don't understand why this was. One that really comes to my mind was there was a large company that had acquired about 140 other companies, and they had a huge mainframe system running Pick Universe, which is actually a thing. And it's been around since the 60s. And they had a pricing system for pricing everything they sold, and they sold an awful lot of different types of physical goods. Loads, everything you could imagine, literally everything you could imagine. And what had happened is, as they brought in more companies, it seemed like this pricing system got bigger and bigger and bigger because, they do discounts, buy one get one free. They do 20% off. They do weekend discounts. Because they're up north, they want discounts for people who residents. This is a manager's special. You can imagine how complicated pricing systems get.
Yeah.
And then we found this pricing thing, and we weren't mainframe experts or anything, but you can still read the stuff. And it was 59,000 lines long. One entry point, one exit point. 59,000 lines of code to get you a price. So the little team started up and off they set, and they did absolutely fantastic work. And they got to a point where they got something like within 97% replication of what the existing system did. And they wrote a domain-specific language to crunch all the pricing rules down into 30 lines.
30 lines?
From 59,000 to 30. And we went up to the client, and we had a few slides, because we have to, don't get me started on PowerPoint. And a kind of conceptual overview of what it was, what we did, and there was quite a lot of people there, and the program director was there, and we showed them. And then he was like, well, how many lines of code did you get this down to? And we were like, 30. And he's like, 30,000. And we were like, no, 30, as in 30. And he's like, I don't believe you. And Paul chucked up the 30 lines on the screen, and they were just, what? And then the guy said, I want that, put that on a page, I want that. And everybody was like, wow. And we never got any more business from that.
Done.
We ended.
He took the 30 lines?
It just ended.
Yeah.
And I think they're still in the same situation with that mainframe. And I'm still to this day, there was a change in senior management that happened at that time, and so forth, and I just still wonder. Right? It's like, it was just like the little team was just absolutely fantastically brilliant, and they took both a kind of innovation and an analytical approach. Like, one guy went through the whole thing line by line, subroutine by subroutine. The other guy did a kind of how would I reimagine this to work? And then the third guy sticking it all together and using ITs to say, this is what we're trying to get out of it.
Right.
I thought this was exemplary, right? This was cutting edge. And nothing, right? Nothing on the end of it. And I still, to this day, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know, it's still...
There's a lot of politics things that I don't know.
One thing I'm just not very good at,
right,
is politics. I just don't... I don't know. I'm like, I feel about politics like non-engineering people feel about engineering.
Right.
I think, right? Which is, I just started to shut down. I'm not quite sure what it's about.
So let's go where maybe there's less politics, because I have to ask you more. You know, we sort of know you a little bit about an interest in boats. I've actually held courses, you know, in your boat.
Yes, you did.
The Thames, you
You
know,
did,
like
yes.
you know, been sitting there, a little boat, or actually, it's a big boat.
She was big, wasn't she?
Yes, great.
Yeah, I have had a fascination with boats. Interesting enough, like I'm not a very good sailor. I'm not even a very good swimmer, but I do like boats. I just have, I don't know, there's some grace about boats, which is, and there's more, I think, creativity in boats as well. You look at cars, everything's mass produced and so on. You look at boats, you think, I can kind of get more of an intent of the designer by looking at this. And some of them are fantastically smart. And you look now at how electric engines are working. People have got like wind turbines and solar panels on them. It's like, this is cool.
Yeah.
And there's just something beautiful about living on the water, you know, really living on the water. So I've been banging on for years. Let's move on to a boat. HMS President was down by Blackfriars Bridge, and we went down from our lab that was in Holborn at the time, and we went down. It was a lovely sunny day. The girl came out from reception. She showed us around. Then she dropped us up on the back deck. We sat up on the back deck. She brought us out some beers and said, "You guys have a think about it." And we were just sat there going, "This is just amazing."
Didn't really need too much thinking.
We didn't need too much thinking. However, when we got below deck, when we moved in, it was a different story, because the boat moved around quite a lot, and on low and high tide, when she rolled around, she really rolled.
Right.
She also tended
These are the offices, right?
Yeah,
Just
these were the
completely
offices.
clear.
And it had a tendency to stick at an angle.
Right.
So the very first morning we were there, after we had a huge party the night before for moving in,
Yeah.
myself and Tom were not feeling so great.
Mm.
We got in, the boat was hot, and we realised we were sat at an angle, and we were kind of hanging onto the desks,
Yeah.
trying to hold on to it. We were like, what have we done? I really enjoyed the boat. I guess it was a novelty for people as
Yeah.
well, that they like up on top where we did tech on deck and the training and stuff.
Right.
It was cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Down
So
below
nice.
decks.
Yeah.
Down below decks, not so good. It's like staff, you know,
Yeah.
customers and staff, right? That was the difference.
There were some sunny days when I was there.
Yeah.
We were up on the deck. It was just beautiful.
It's beautiful,
Yeah,
right?
it's just-
It's the downside is perhaps that it's a bit cramped and all those kind of things. But yeah, it was really good fun.
So, okay. So, as I understand, you just exited your company.
Yeah, I finished
Sold
up after
it,
12.
right.
Yeah, 12 years.
Now, I don't know what's new for you, but there are lots of young guys coming up. You know, and it's great to get a little bit of advice from people who have gone a path. It's not their path, but it's
Yeah.
your path. You've gone your path. Now, so if you were to give some advice to such people, you know, what would that be? Like, assuming, let's say they
Turn
want
back.
Yeah,
Turn
let's say they want to, you know, either get into programming or
Yeah.
product management,
Yeah.
product development. I know it's a little wide, but
Yeah.
some area like that, engineering. You know.
So there are some things that I knew that I did not learn in my teens or 20s.
Right.
Absolutely, that were completely missing from anything that I did in university or in any of the jobs that I did around that. The first one, there's a few. The first one has to be the study of philosophy of some description, really. And you're talking about meaning. You know, we look at how people treat each other, and we look at how people assemble work systems or assign meaning to things, and without a basis to understand what somebody's worldview is and where they're coming from, and developing our own, it's very difficult to have any kind of position in that thing. You just kind of go along with it. And in your 20s, you tend to go along with it. You might know something's wrong, but you tend to go along with it. So, you know, just to give a kind of a slight example, so a lot of the coaching that I've seen has been highly manipulative in how it's approached, getting people to do what coaches want them to do without them really being aware of it. The thing is that people are more than aware of inauthenticity and of people trying to manipulate them. What they'll do, though, is if they think they're not in a position of power, is that they'll cover up the fact that they know they've been manipulated. Right? Let's make it undiscussable, and then fight back in their own way. Typically by taking the terrorist line and saying this change program is never going to work, and all this kind of stuff. It leads to all this terribly negative stuff. And also, like I've done it myself, I've tried to say, let's change the environment, let's do this, let's do that. People will be happy, or people will be more productive and more confident if we do this. Now, environmental changes are great, don't get me wrong, good working environment, brilliant. But to take that's a Skinnerist approach, where there's no such thing as free will, so nothing comes from inside you. It's just that you're simply a kind of a stimulus response mechanism. And that is absolutely dehumanizing and unfair to people that you work with. So the reason why for me the study of philosophy, and like you can get a book on philosophy, all these different types of philosophy, and whistle through it in a it's not going to be a deep study, don't get me wrong, because people spend their whole lives doing this. But we should at least know the basics of where people come from and why. What's an existentialist? Like a constructivist. Why do they hold that point of view? Why do they think that doing something creates meaning versus the internal world? Even the difference between kind of a Platonic universe and an Aristotelian one. Because we also deal with information systems, and these people were critical to understand, like Plato and types, right? It's like this is the perfect horse. All horses come from this abstract base class horse, which all other horse implementations come from, or Aristotle with his categorizations and so forth. So that for me is really, really one of the critical things that I missed, and it was through my wife's interest in this whole kind of domain that I became fascinated in it. But it would have helped me years and years ago if I'd have done it.
Right.
That was like the first critical thing. I could chuck in some more, which would be anything, it's akin to this, anything on critical thinking.
Right.
So
do you have any examples?
So we get fooled into a whole lot of things, especially with the media nowadays, by believing things, either believing statistics or believing claims that are made by things.
Right.
So we're led to believe in a very simple cause and effect world, where I think what would be du jour now, it would be one of the leaders of the Western world is directly responsible, as in their hand directly has created some catastrophe for some people group somewhere. The reality, of course, is far, far more complicated than that. If we think about how big a system of government is, and how many layers of, like, if you've ever tried to work with government or get anything done, you'll realize how different the reality of the situation is from what the media portrays. So it helps us unwind some of the BS that we experience. And we also see this in company strategies and things, by the way. But
are there any critical thinking books, tools, methods that you can mention? Just
absolutely.
Like a starter kit for somebody?
I think Logical Self-Defense it's a book, I think it's got an umbrella on it or something like that, is an absolutely splendid and simple book. The thing is that these are all simple, but they require thought and practice to try to do it. And I'm still catching myself out, right? Because the third part of this moves on to Chris Argyris' work, or Argyris, some people call him. He passed away a few years ago, but he has some very, very interesting ways of understanding how people learn, and more importantly, how they don't learn. And he talks about how in times of fear or threat, people revert to never being able to pick up why things went wrong, because they basically feel like embarrassed.
So this is for themselves to understand their learning model?
Yes, exactly, and to try to learn as individuals and as groups, because learning is an intrinsic part of the design process. We must continuously test reality and come back and say, oh, that worked or it didn't work. What did we observe? What did we expect? Oh, the difference between what we expected and what we observed is an error. So if we admit that, let's have another think and a talk about it. But if it's your design or my design, and you come back to me and say, hey, Guss, that didn't work. What the hell? You said it was going to do whatever. Well, that was a load of crap. Then what happens is that I get defensive. and I go, I'm not going to talk to you anymore, or yeah, whatever, Kai, and we're not going to dig deeper into what's really, really going on, right? So that is, it's a critical part of, like, he has different learning theories, but principally around how people they say that they want things, like they say that they want to be open for learning, but when you look at how they behave, they might not be open for learning. And this is really subtle stuff. And a lot of people try to attack improvements when they look at, let's restructure, let's move around these departments, right? Let's move around these groups and form new groups, in-groups and out-groups, and all this kind of stuff. And they think that's magically going to create all this new productivity, new levels of quality and enthusiasm. And for some reason, it never works. My view is to take completely the opposite and just try to build better relationships with the people that are immediately around you, and be open to say, hey, I think that if we do this, it's not going to work. And here's why. I think that I'm worried that if I tell you that I think this is a bad design, you're gonna blow up in my face, and then I'm going to say something stupid. I'm going to hurt you, and I want to protect you from that, and I just don't want to go there. You know, being able to have those conversations, and it's like, well, all right, why do you think I'm going to blow up? And it's like, because last time you said, and it's like, right, I didn't, you know what I mean? And then we can unravel and have a much more productive conversation, because design is personal.
So what did you call him? Chris
Argyris. Argyris. It's a strange surname.
And is there a book title?
There's a free PDF you can download if you're interested in this kind of stuff. It's called Teaching Smart People How to Learn.
Right.
And it is absolutely opened my eyes. I'm still novice level on this stuff, and I've been trying this for a long time. But I'm reading his stuff again now, and it's just fantastically brilliant. He really gets into how we try to protect others and ourselves, all with good intentions.
Right.
But we end up in situations where we're faced with situations where we just we didn't learn anything from that. That just seems silly, you know, all those kind of things. And these were the things that they don't teach you. You'll learn about cap theorem, you'll learn about red-black trees till you're blue in the face, you'll learn about, you know, sorting and quick sorting and ON plus 1 and you know, you've got to learn all those kind of things if you do computer science. If you go and do your MBA, you're going to learn all about P&Ls, cash flow, inventory, you know, value at risk probably. You're going to do a whole lot of things about mergers and acquisitions, intangible value, hopefully, because they used not to teach about that. And, you know, assets and all these kind of things. You'll learn a whole load of things about investment and all those kind of, so that they're all great, and they're all good how things. But these are the things that bind them together. You cannot escape the fact that you're human and you're going to be working with humans. I know people will say, I'm going to be working with AI in the future. Remember who created those AI, right? So they'll always have a stamp of their creator on them.
Thank you. Now, when was the last time you played with Lego or built something with it?
So now I do grown-up old person's Lego, which is called DIY. So I have a chop saw and a table, and I buy wood from a local tannalized wood place out east. And my next project is I'm building a pergola.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was until my wife showed me what it was.
Okay.
And I got that I'm building one. So it's a bit like a. Have you seen? They look Japanese. So it's like a cross beam with two beams on the side, and it's kind of like cut at an angle. Sometimes they're fancy. They look quite lovely, and then there's a number of them together, and they have slats. So they're wooden. They're freestanding structures that are outside, and they provide kind of some shelter or some space and that kind of stuff. So that is my next.
Lego.
My next Lego. And of course I have my boat, which is an everyday Lego adventure.
I'm sure.
Be it replacing pipes, pulling up floorboards, or doing whatever it has to be done. Well, I would like to get back to maybe thinking about smaller stuff again, but there is something thrilling about saying, I've just shut off the gas, or I've just shut off the electricity, and now I'm going to move this around, or I'm going to put in a new shower. It's like, I know it sounds really dull, doesn't it? Well, I never trained as a plumber, I never trained as any of these things. So now I get to learn about it and go, oh, bloody hell, this is hard. Even painting. I was painting a room the other day. And you know, painting, like I painted my boat the other day, and that's just work. But doing an interior paint job and making it really nice is really hard.
Yeah.
It's really
I
hard.
know,
I
I
covered
know.
myself in paint. I knocked paint on the ceiling. We had to retouch the ceiling up. It was like on the chair I was working on, and then you go, oh, and then you go, hang on a sec, that's got patchy over there. It looks like there isn't enough paint on. I put 3 coats on. How could it be sparse? So there's like skill in ordinary things. Like, I don't know if you read the book Deep Work.
I haven't.
Right, so the guy, the first guy, he tunes pianos, and he was always worried about being late. He was always in a rush. So as a result, he was kind of not enjoying his job, and he was chasing from place to place to place, setting up for concerts and all this kind of stuff in his truck. And he just one day said, enough is enough. I'm sick of this. I'm going to go do the first job, and I'm just going to focus, going to block everything else out of my mind. Where my wife is, do I have to pick the kids up, where's my truck, am I going to get a parking ticket, you know, all the chatter. I'm going to block it all out, and I'm just going to focus singularly on doing the best job I can with this piano.
The thing in front of you.
The thing in front of you, being in the world, as Heidegger would say, just that. And so he does it, and he spends a sweet time doing it, and he's really pleased with himself. And then he packs up all his stuff, and he thinks about, I'm going to take this tool out first, and then this one. You know, he's learning in the small.
Right.
That's what I love about, say, painting. You learn all these tricks in the small. You couldn't even describe what the tricks are. But if you see an experienced welder or plumber or something, they know all these tricks. You watch how they conduct themselves. It's amazing. So it's real technique, you know. And he gets back out to the truck, and he's like, oh, I must be like an hour late for my next appointment, and finds out that he's actually done it quicker than he'd normally do it. Right, deep work, because he was able to immerse himself, shut out all that noise, chatter, and distraction, and he felt good about it. He was like, I did a great job. Right, now I don't always do a great job, but I really do enjoy learning stuff, right, that kind of small stuff.
Guss
Cool.
Power, it has been a pleasure. I enjoyed learning from you, listening to you, and I hope somebody is listening to that and enjoyed it too, and maybe got some really good advice from that. I sure did. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.